Hi, thanks everyone for joining us today. Just wait a couple minutes and we'll get started. Bye everybody, just a couple more minutes and we'll get started here. Alrighty, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Carrie. I'm a sales development rep here at TPGI. A few housekeeping items before we start. This session is being recorded and we will be emailing everyone the recording after the event. We have captions available, so feel free to use them as needed. We will have time for a Q&A, so please use the Q&A box and we will answer as many of the questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Sometimes we miss questions if they're in the chat, so please utilize the Q&A box. Lastly, I'd like to mention if anybody needs any accessibility support, training, or usability testing, I will send out an email with a link to schedule time to speak with one of our experts after the webinar. With that, I will let Anthony and Leilani get started to provide an introduction of themselves.
Thank you very much, Carrie, and thank you all for being here today. I'm just looking in the chat and I see people are joining from all over, so we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, our session today is creating accessible social media content, designing for connection and inclusion. So we'll get started with some introductions now.
Hi, I'm Leilani Mason. I'm a solutions engineer here at TPGI. I've been working here for about 3 years now. And in my role, I help customers determine which accessibility solutions best fit their needs. And I also set up accessibility audits in our ARC platform. In my personal time, I'm a big social media user. I love taking pictures and sharing them with my friends and family.
And I'm Anthony Priori. I'm the digital marketing manager at TPGI. I've worked here for almost 3 years, and while Leilani likes to use social media more for fun, it's more part of my job description. So part of my job is managing and maintaining all of our social media platforms. And during my time here working at TPGI and handling those social media platforms, I've learned how to be a better marketer because of the accessibility considerations that need to be made. And I hope that you can learn some of those today through our session. So we're going to start with some common mistakes in posts. This is pretty high level, but also something that I think we all do as maybe casual social media posters. So you're going to avoid using acronyms or abbreviations or jargon without context. So, for example, we at TPGI may be posting quite a bit about WCAG or ADA or the European Accessibility Act. All those have acronym abbreviations. So the EAA, ADA, WCAG. it's important in social media posts to try to say the name first and then in parentheses put the abbreviation rather than referring to the abbreviation first. So that way there's more context and understanding from the person absorbing and reading your content. You're also going to try to avoid using all caps or alternating caps. On screen, we have one of our favorite memes, the SpongeBob mocking meme with the alternating capitalized and lowercase letters. Unfortunately, that's not something that's going to be great for screen reader users. You're going to try to want to use proper punctuation. So anytime a capital letter is used, it's going to think it's the start of a new word. So in this case, when we're talking about hashtags as well, you're going to want to try to use camel case, where it's just going to be hashtag camel with a capital C and then case with a capital C. And that way the screen reader will know it's different words. So if you're alternating text like that or trying to be funny, it's not going to be a great experience for a screen reader user. So keep that in mind. And while we're talking about hashtags, it's also really important to put them at the end of your post. So that way it makes for the best reading experience possible. Something else to consider is not to use M or N dashes. I know that's something we maybe write or think about without a lot of context, but screen readers don't read them. So always spell out the word. So minus or you spelling out the word too. So we have examples here that may be helpful. So when referring to a time, May 2025 from 3:30 and then the word to 5:30 p.m. She got an A minus with the word minus spelled out on the quiz, or the fiscal year from 2015 to, and again, the word to 2016. So this will make sure that the screen reader is reading the sentence properly. And another thing to consider is using moving GIFs or flashing media may cause seizures, so be mindful of that. Non-moving memes are preferred, which you can customize using tools like imageflip.com, Canva, or HubSpot, so you can sort of create how they appear, and we'll get into the alt text for those in a minute. Or if you want to use visual content, it's probably better to use videos just because you can control the closed captioning or the subtitles on those, and you'll be able to provide a more clear warning if there's flashes to be had. Everyone also loves to use emojis. So emojis are described by a screen reader, which is great, but it can sometimes provide them not the most ideal reading experience. So we have the clapping hands emojis on screen. We also have the 5 stars as well. So if you want to include stars, it's best to write 5-star emoji review, not 5-star emojis in a row, because then the screen reader will read it as star emoji, star emoji, star emoji, star emoji, star emoji review. And that, even just saying it out loud, is not the most pleasant to hear. So be mindful of that for screen reader users. We also have another example where the emoji is kind of bookending a sentence. So alarm clock, time is running out, alarm clock is probably going to be a little bit redundant, and you want to try to keep it minimal. So again, it's okay to use emojis, just don't overdo it because they will be read out. And it's important to think about that when creating the social media posts.
Something else that may be posted on social media is ASCII art. ASCII stands for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. And ASCII art is created by forming pictures or emoticons out of those ASCII characters. And it can look really cool. We have some examples here of a person emoticon thing shrugging its shoulders. And then we also have a cat and the planet Saturn. And all of this art is made solely out of characters and symbols. But while ASCII art is cool, it's inaccessible because it is made up of a bunch of random characters. So when a screen reader user encounters ASCII art, all they will hear is a series of random characters repeated. So a better alternative to the ASCII art emoticons, like the one that's a person shrugging their shoulders, is using those equivalent emojis, because as Anthony said, those emojis will be described by screen readers. Additionally, if you want to share like the elaborate ASCII art, not an emoji, you could take a screenshot of the ASCII art and then post that as an image with alt text so it's accessible to screen reader users. So speaking of alt text, which is also known as alternative text, is a description of visual content, and it's primarily for screen reader users. So when a screen reader user navigates to an image on social media, if it was configured, the alt text ideally will be announced. Alt text should be accurate, so that means it should describe the relevant information in the image. And alt text should also be objective. So if you're describing something and you think it's like pretty or ugly, that information could be left out because it's subjective, not objective. And then alt text should also be concise. So make sure that you begin your alt text with the most important information. And an additional benefit of alt text is that it can improve SEO or search engine optimization. Although filler words shouldn't be stuffed into alt text with the goal of improving SEO, because again, the primary purpose of alt text is to describe visual content to screen reader users.
Yeah, so kind of extrapolating off of what Leilani's talking about, we have some best practices for images and alt text. So firstly, for the image itself, you're going to want to make sure that the contrast on it is correct. It makes the text easy to read on your background, and make sure the image is more visible for someone with low vision. So you can check color contrast with TPGI's color contrast analyzer tool before sharing anything. This is a free tool, so we highly recommend you use it. It's great for any image or graphic, not only for social media, but for anything that you plan on using it for. But in regards to the alt text itself, kind of like Leilani said, it's going to describe only how the image relates to the content. So what is its purpose and why is the image there? Again, there could potentially be SEO value in it, but it's not the exclusive value of it. If there's SEO value obtained because you describe the image properly, then that is how you should be handling it. It's best to make sure that the alt text is brief. Again, it will be read by the screen reader, so try to keep it 2 sentences or between 8 and 120 characters is considered best practice. And then just don't use words like image of or photo of because it's going to be redundant. The screen reader is going to let the user know that there's an image in the post and it will make that clear. So just try to avoid any kind of phrasing like that.
So another important aspect of accessibility on social media is captions. So video captions describe audio content as text, and captions appear in real time as the video plays. Captions can be closed captions, open captions, or subtitles, and using video captions can allow members of the deaf and hard of hearing community to access your content. And this is important because people who are deaf or hard of hearing make up over 5% of the world's population, so that's a lot of people. And then an additional benefit to captions is that all users, deaf or hearing, can play content in a noisy environment, like if you're in a restaurant or if you're in a doctor's office waiting room and you like can't play a video loud. You can leave the video on mute and then just read the captions. So captions can also increase overall engagement on social media, which can be helpful. And then additionally, transcripts are those can be provided as well, and to provide access to even more groups of people, including people who are deaf blind. And transcripts are similar to captions because they're text versions of auditory content, although they're not time coded like captions, they're just plain text. So closed captions can be turned on and off, and they include a description of background sounds. And then closed captions are typically in the same language as the audio. And so we have an example from TPGI's YouTube channel. So in this example, the video has closed captions, which can be turned on and off by using the CC button in the video player. To compare, open captions are similar to closed captions, except open captions are always on the screen, and they're a part of the video file and they can't be turned off. So we have another example from TPGI's YouTube channel. And there are open captions on this video, so that means that the user cannot control them using the video player. Subtitles can be turned on and off, and they're similar to closed captions, although it doesn't include a description of background sounds, and it's not always written in the same language as the audio. So, for example, if I wanted to watch a show that's in Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish, I can turn on the English subtitles. So, the audio of the show would be in Spanish still, but I could read the English subtitles. So to be effective and provide equal access, video captions need to be accurate. So whatever is being spoken aloud should be written that way. So if a word is spoken aloud, including profanity, it should not be censored in the captions. Additionally, automated captions, they can be good, and as technology, including AI, improves, automated captions are improving and getting better. But captions should be verified by a human and should be corrected if there are any errors. If you post a video and you just flip on the automated captions, they should be edited and not just flipped on and then never checked again.
Okay, so some best practices to think about for your videos is to make sure you include subtitles, closed captions, and a video transcript. And this is particularly going to be important on YouTube. You can upload your own closed captioning files, and you can also include a link to this transcript in the bio, which is considered best practices. So you can use closed captioning in the WebVTT format, but if you're posting on something like LinkedIn and you're uploading the video directly from the source file, it's required that you have a subrip. But again, these are all just multiple file formats. Depending on what platform you're using, it may be different, but it's good to have them all available. When you're posting videos, whether it be from YouTube or you're uploading the source file to a post, it's important to include trigger warnings just to warn anyone about flashing lights or moving colors. And video content should include any audio descriptions before the main video starts. Okay, so we've talked a lot about best practices for social media broadly and as a whole, but now Leilani and I are going to spend some time talking about them individually. As social media marketers or marketers in general, there's going to be a lot of different platforms you're using, and they all have different accessibility considerations and things that we need to take into account. So we'll start with LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has a variety of accessibility considerations and features, and some of the most robust ones are with their closed captioning. We do have a link in this PowerPoint, which has been shared with you all, and we'll share it again after the session for adding captions to videos in LinkedIn. So an alternative to SRT files is embedding YouTube videos with the captioning. And as Leilani had talked about, you can either burn those captions in if you have a video editor on the team, or you can have them uploaded as part of the file formats on the back end of YouTube. Something else to consider, which is particularly relevant for TPGI, because we do host a podcast that's live on LinkedIn, the State of Accessibility podcast. If you're connecting a third-party streaming service to cast to LinkedIn live, turning the captions on, or make sure you turn the captions on the third party. LinkedIn will not default and have them on. So make sure if you're doing anything involving LinkedIn Live, casting through Zoom or any of the other services, you can have those turned on there so it'll be visible to all users. There's also some comprehensive alt text options, which I'll start to share here. So to add alt text to LinkedIn, you'll start by creating a post and you'll add your image. Underneath the image, there's gonna be a pencil icon, an icon of a little person, and the furthest right is going to be Alt. If you click that Alt button after the image has been uploaded, you can start to add your alt text there. It's going to be on the bottom underneath the post itself. Once you open that up, you'll get a text box with a minimum of, or sorry, a maximum of 1,000 characters. That's obviously probably going to be way much more than you need. We had talked about trying to keep it between 8 and 120 or 2 sentences. So they're going to give you more than you need, but feel free to not use that and keep it concise. It's important that the text represent what's in your image. So included any post copy if able. So the example that we have on screen here is the State of Accessibility podcast hosted by TPGI. That's what you need to say for your alt text. It's exactly what the image is. It's not saying image of or the logo of or anything like that. It's clear and concise and states exactly what the image is. From there, you can click add when you're done and then continue with your post as you would otherwise. Um, Obviously, alt text, this may be an oversimplification, but alt text can be challenging and hard to write. We do have an article available, What is Alt Text and How to Write It? It's on TPGI's blog. It's also linked in this PowerPoint presentation, and it'll go into more in-depth considerations for alt text for images on your website, but social media in general. It can be challenging, but we have resources and tools available to help you if you have questions. So additional notes about alt text specifically on LinkedIn. So alt text is not available for media files in your profile section. So if you're adding a PDF to the expertise section of your portfolio or any other kinds of documents like that, it's not gonna the preview image is not gonna have alt text on it. So when adding media files, make sure you include the file type in the title. So for example, accessibility training PDF. That way the user knows exactly what they're going to be clicking on and looking at.
So Instagram is a photo and video sharing app, which is owned by Meta. And on Instagram, you can share photos and videos to your grid, which stays on your profile until you like delete it or archive it. And then there's also a stories feature that you can share photos and videos to your stories, which typically lasts for 24 hours. And Instagram allows users to create alt text to their grid posts before or after posting if you wanted to go back and add alt text if you forgot or if you wanted to edit the alt text that you initially created. And Instagram also has automatically generated alt text for grid posts, although that shouldn't be relied on because it can sometimes be vague or inaccurate. Stories generally are not fully accessible to screen reader users. So if you're posting content to stories, you should make sure that it's available elsewhere, like somewhere else where it is more accessible. Um, and then Instagram also offers automated captions for grid posts and stories. On grid posts, they may be closed or open captions, and then stories have open captions. And those automated captions could be a helpful start, so you don't have to write the captions, like write all of them manually on your own, but they should be reviewed and then edited for accuracy. Facebook is a social media app, again, owned by Meta, and users can upload photos, videos, and text posts. And Facebook has a lot of similar features accessibility wise to Instagram that I just covered. And so again, there are some built-in and automated features for alt text and captions, although the automated alt text and captions should never fully be relied on and should always be edited. Again, and then additionally, since you can make text posts on Facebook, ensure you're not like misusing emojis, misusing or writing hashtags incorrectly, not using camel case. And then ensure that you're not just pasting ASCII art into a text post on Facebook and not doing it in a way that's accessible to screen reader users. Threads is a conversation app It's a newer app compared to Facebook and Instagram, and they're the third app that is owned by Meta that we're covering today. And Threads allows users to add alt text to images and to the thumbnails of videos that they post. What's interesting with Threads is that when they first launched, they did face some criticism for not initially having accessibility features like alt text. And so some accessibility advocates, they opted to not use Threads at that time, or others, they used like workarounds. So they would put, if they posted an image, they would put alt text like directly in the post. But now Threads has a true alt text feature, which is a good improvement. And then additionally, if you want to view alt text and you're like not using a screen reader, that can be enabled in settings. And Threads also has like a newer feature called spoiler, which covers up certain words that the user chooses like to cover in their post. It's kind of similar to invisible ink, like in Apple's iMessage. And so the content doesn't appear unless you press it intentionally to reveal it. And how it works on Threads is it can be used to avoid spoilers on, like about if you're talking about a TV show or a movie that maybe everyone hasn't watched yet. And yeah, so it's supposed to hide certain content, but the content that's supposed to be hidden is automatically read by screen readers at this time. So if you're posting on Threads and you're using that spoiler feature with the intent of hiding those certain words in your post from everyone, you should be aware that like it may not function that way, and you may spoil the thing that you're trying not to spoil if someone's using assistive technology. So TikTok is primarily a video sharing app. Personally, one of my favorites. I love to do a TikTok dance every once in a while. But TikTok does have automated captions, and they also allow users to create and edit their own open captions. And TikTok also has a feature for seizure warnings, so it can detect flashing content and provide flash warnings. But users should also include their own warning because automated detection may not always be accurate. And then additionally, if you can avoid posting that content, that's also helpful. So X, which used to be Twitter a while ago, is a conversation app, and X allows users to add alt text to their photo posts before posting. There's also an alt text reminder feature that can remind you to put alt text on your photos, but it needs to be turned on first in settings. Alt text is visible to all users and not just screen reader users. Although sometimes this feature can be misused because alt text is visible to everyone. Sometimes if people don't understand what alt text is, they may just use it to hide information, kind of like a spoiler feature, or they may like use the alt text feature to hide the punchline of a joke. But it's not the purpose of alt text, and misusing the alt text feature is not equal access for screen reader users. And then X also provides automated captions for videos and voice posts, but users also have the option to create their own captions if they upload an SRT file on the desktop version of X. And X faced criticism when they released their voice post feature initially, because captions or transcripts weren't available when the feature was released. So it's another example of when you're using social media, and if you notice features that aren't accessible, you should make sure that that information is available elsewhere. And if you need to use that feature, is there a workaround you can use to make it accessible in the meantime? Um, Additionally, X also faced some backlash for removing their accessibility team when they transitioned from Twitter to X, and that led to many accessibility advocates and professionals leaving the app completely.
Okay, so Blue Sky and the next one that we're going to get to, Mastodon, are two that are newer and maybe a little less known, but they were, for a lot of people, more accessible alternatives to X and Twitter, given the accessibility de-emphasis that the X and Twitter had been making that Leilani had mentioned. So in the case of Blue Sky, the interface really resembles X and Twitter from years ago and has the accessibility features that they eliminated over the last few years. So an example is there's a warning now on images that don't have alt text. So if you upload an image, there will be a box that pops up that says that this will need alt text, which is something that is really helpful and great to bring awareness to. You can also turn on display features for larger alt text badges in your settings. So there's some good alt text considerations on Blue Sky. And again, if you're looking for something that has more of the feel of what Twitter used to be, it might be a good option for you and perhaps the community that you're sharing content to. In the case of Mastodon, it also has a warning when images don't have alt text. And this is an app that many engineers, developers, and accessibility thought leaders migrated to, including plenty from TPGI. And that's partly a reason why TPGI is fairly active on Mastodon, is because there's a lot of different servers and communities on Mastodon that are reaching the audience that we would like to speak to, including, like I mentioned, engineers, developers, and a lot of the accessibility community is there as well. So this is kind of proven to be something that's very similar to Twitter, but also kind of has almost a Reddit feel in the subcategories and the communities that you can join there. Mastodon also prides itself on a simplified web interface. And in your settings, you can reduce motion and animations to also disable swiping motions. Or you can also disable swiping motions if needed if you're on a mobile device. So there's a lot of things that are good for cognitive and motion sensitivity on Mastodon that not a lot of other social media platforms have. And speaking of Reddit, again, a large portion of the accessibility community exists on Reddit. So there's plenty of subreddits sharing experiences, technical knowledge, and more. And it's a great place to get really focused and tailored content based on the community and the audience you're reaching. And you'll know it's going to be accessible. They have alt text options, and you can add video files as well. So besides being an open and safe space for accessibility discussions, the platform itself is accessible and exclusive, and it's also that carries over to their paid advertising as well. I know this is more of an organic social media discussion, but a lot of marketers do use social media platforms to share paid content, and Reddit will allow you to have some of those same benefits as well. YouTube's going to fall kind of in line a lot with what we talked about earlier, so apologies for a little bit of redundancy, but it's important to make these points known with some of the captioning files. So make sure you can do two things. You can upload your captions, whether they be an SRT, a text, a WebVTT file, or you can burn them into the video itself. So if you're creating the video, you have the ability to add the captions burned into the video itself. You can do that. They'll always be on. Or if you want to have the option, you can upload a separate file to the settings of YouTube, and it'll work just the same. And then those captions will carry on if you were to post that on any other social media platform as well. So just try to create video posts on YouTube the same way that you would if you upload the video file to any other social media platform. Include closed captioning, flash warnings, and if you can, try to include a link to the transcript in the description or somewhere in the video itself. So now we're going to get to some social media scheduling. And I know a lot of these social media platforms offer scheduling, but there's also platforms that do as well, like HubSpot and Hootsuite. And it is on the surface faster and easier, and a lot of times it's really beneficial, but it's not always accessible or as accessible as the platform that you want to post on itself. So just be mindful and considerate. So for example, HubSpot offers alt text limitations that LinkedIn or Facebook or X or Twitter do not have. So sometimes putting alt text there isn't always as helpful. Or including captioning files may not link properly on a scheduling platform as they would on another platform or the platform that you want to post to. So just be mindful and double check everything. You certainly can. There's certainly value to it, but it's not one of those set it and forget it things. You're going to want to double check and verify everything you do. And sometimes it may feel the work that you're doing to double check, it may just be worth to post it on your own. Again, as marketers, scheduling things is great. So we do like to plan that ahead because we're busy and sometimes it's not ideal to post at that specific moment, but just be mindful and considerate. Some bonus content that I did want to talk about is ChatGPT and other AI platforms and social media. As us as marketers have our jobs and our roles are changing every day, and AI is making it even more complicated or sometimes easier. But tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot need as much detail as possible in the prompts. And this can be for alt text or it can be for the social media post itself, but make sure that you're providing as much detail as possible. So adding content in brackets helps clarify your specific focus and refines the response. So for instance, by adding blog in brackets in the prompt and pasting the entire blog gives it all the info it needs to make your post as accurate as possible. But always double check the response for accuracy. This is AI. It's not 100% accurate. It can be a great platform and stepping stool, but you will need to edit it. And that's going to be the same for alt text too. And these are things that are great to start with, but we're not recommending that you use them and set it and forget it. You'll need to verify everything more closely. So we have an example prompt on the screen. And again, this can be changed for whatever setting, for whatever platform, for whether you're posting for yourself or whether you're posting on behalf of your company. But you're a social media marketing expert with 15 years of experience writing engaging social media posts for professionals in the B2B accessibility industry. I am, and then in parentheses, put your job title, and I want to, in parentheses, reason for why you're sharing the content. So using the content from whatever the blog may be help me create a social media post that I can share on whatever platform you prefer. So this may seem cumbersome and redundant, but the more information you feed ChatGPT or any of these AI platforms, the more accurate it's going to be, and it's going to learn from that. So you're obviously going to want to reread and double check everything, but this is how you want to phrase these kinds of prompts when you are using them. Another bonus content I wanted to share just kind of selfishly as a marketer, because I know we think about these things are the best times of day and the days of week to post. So this may change based on the time zone of your audience or something like that, but we have found and best practices have found Mondays between 11 and noon, Tuesday mornings or then 2 and then 3 and 4 p.m., Wednesday almost all day, Thursday almost all day, but ending a little bit earlier, and then Friday 10 to 11. So these are some things to keep in mind. Again, keep in mind time zone of the audience that you're posting for. Keep in mind what your audience is doing. This is sort of speaking more broadly. It could be different. You may have data from your own accounts that suggest otherwise, but this is kind of high level sometimes to think about posting this newly accessible content that now we've just kind of walked you through, so that way you're getting the most visibility on it as well. This webinar, I hope you found helpful, and TPGI provides all kinds of other services too, in addition to the content you're here. So we have solutions that work for everyone. So whether it be audits, design, consulting, user flow testing, assistive technology, blind or low vision tools and services, we can help. So just feel to contact us and we'll be happy to partner with you and help you with all of your accessibility needs, perhaps beyond the content and the social media aspects that we've shared today.
Additionally, many of the topics that we covered today about social media and best practices are also available on our blog and then also in our Knowledge Center. So TPGI's blog is public on our website, and we have articles on accessibility news, strategy, and program management. And then our blog also has some technical accessibility articles and information on upcoming events. And then in our Accessibility Resource Center, ARC platform, we have a comprehensive knowledge center. And so one part of our knowledge center is Tutor, which has self-paced accessibility courses. And these courses are broken into bite-sized lessons lessons which are perfect for a lunch and learn, for example. And then we also have knowledge-based articles in the Knowledge Center. And so our knowledge base is a library of context-based technical accessibility articles that have code level techniques. And these articles are created and maintained by our very seasoned accessibility experts. And so if you're interested in exploring some of the topics that we discussed today further, please visit our website, tpgi.com, to access our blog, and then also to reach out to us about ARC and the Knowledge Center. So thank you.
So with that, I think we have some time for questions, and I see there's quite a few in the chat. So I will, I don't know, Leilani, if you want me to read them out, or we
Sure.
can. So, firstly, we have creating, composing alt text is very time consuming, and AI is a powerful tool. Can we rely upon any of the web-based AI tools like Perplexity or ChatGPT to help? If we instruct the AI that the audience is cognitively disabled adults, please be specific. Your reply. So yeah, we touched on that just a little bit ago. You certainly can leverage and rely on them a little bit, but again, it's not one of those set it and forget it things. You can provide it with all the information in the world, but you're still going to want to reread it and proof it and make sure that it's accurate and usable for someone with disability. So certainly leverage it, but I would not say you can rely on it with 100% accuracy. And I apologize, there's a thunderstorm happening outside me, so if you can hear any thunder or lightning, that is why.
Oh.
I see a question about captioning tools for desktop or laptops. I'm not sure off the top of my head about any free ones. I know Rev is a good captioning tool that has a few different options. There's a cost associated to it. Otherwise, though, I sometimes if you're recording things on Zoom, there will be captioning files available from the recording. But Leilani, I don't know if you have anything additional to add outside of that.
Yeah, there are like free SRT files online that you could use as a template if you're going that route with uploading your captions. So if you like there's a lot of resources that if you just Google like free SRT template, you could use those. And typically they'll include like instructions on how to populate the template.
All right. How would you write a closed caption for something being mispronounced? For example, when captioning screen readers messing up audio, should you indicate that you're doing phonetic spelling? For example, an Apple VoiceOver accessibility mispronounced is forever eon or something else. I think I would just say try to write it for what it was intended to say, just for the most clarity. Like we can understand that there is a mispronunciation as someone who does not necessarily need the captions. So I think to get the correct intent, you'd probably want to have that correctly. But Leilani, you may have additional input on that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Anthony, and it also depends on the context. So if it's like an accidental mispronunciation and it doesn't like affect the context, then you may want to spell it correctly in the captions. But if it's a situation where you're trying to emphasize the mispronunciation, or if it's like a joke or something and the mispronunciation is important to that joke, that's something that where it may be used. And then that's kind of the same with filler words and captions. Like depending on the context, you might not put like or like or in captions.
Yeah, good point. Can a YouTuber publisher add embedded captions always on the screen after he or she has published to YouTube? If so, is this a lot of work / time consuming? So I think you're referring to burning the captions into the video, and that would only be able to be done when the video was originally uploaded. So if you want to add them on, so let's say you've added a video to YouTube and you've included the web VTT file or subrip file as part of the captioning, and then after the fact you want to burn it in, you would have to make a new video and upload that separately. So to answer your question, if you want to add them after the fact, there'll be a second video. So if that's something that's important to you, you should probably work to try to have the captions burned into the video before publishing. What would an audio description be to include before a video starts? Can you give an example? So I think you're probably referring to posting video content on social media. So describing the video before, just in the post before someone would necessarily watch it. So there could be any flash or trigger warnings like that. Just general description so they know what they're getting into. And then if you're posting it on YouTube, you can have that description in the bio there as well. Leilani, I don't know if there's anything else you would add to that, or that if I misunderstood that question.
Yeah, I don't have anything else on that one.
Okay. All right. Regarding SEO and considering automated website accessibility testing, is the accuracy and utility of correct alt text truly possible? Do we have any published articles or research on this thorny topic? So, again, SEO shouldn't be the first consideration you make with alt text. You're just going to try to describe the image as best as you can. And if there's text or copy on that image, make sure you 100% include that on the alt text. In terms of resources, there are plenty that exist on TPGI's website, and there's one linked into this presentation, which was already emailed out to you and will be shared again. We'll also include that in resources when you follow up as well. So yeah, TPGI does have tons of content on alt text, but it's important to remember that SEO should never be the first consideration with alt text. It's a happy thing that comes if you describe it and it works out, but should not be part of your consideration if it doesn't match. For platforms with limited character count like Instagram, what advice would you have for creating WCAG 2.0 compliant videos, especially if providing a transcript isn't possible? I probably would recommend linking to the YouTube account where you can have more of that flexibility if you have the YouTube video. You can only work with what you can on a platform like Instagram, so you can't obviously change any settings, but if you can link off to something else, or include a YouTube or another, or maybe a page on your website with the embedded video and more accessibility features there, that might be a good alternative. Leilani, I'm not sure if you have anything, especially regarding WCAG 2.0.
Yeah, I was just going to say like having the audio track and having captions is good for accessibility, but transcripts specifically allow you to provide access for more people, including people who are deaf blind. So, and as Anthony mentioned, if you have that limitation, you kind of just have to find workarounds. So yeah, like he said, with the link.
Any communities you recommend on Reddit on accessibility? I believe there is an r/accessibility community that's really robust and has a lot of content on it. Outside of that, I don't know any of others off the top of my head. Generally, if you search for accessibility, there will be a lot that come up, and you can kind of judge it based on the amount of people in the community. But Leilani, I don't know if you've had any experience on that yourself.
I believe there's some disability specific
Yeah.
subreddit. So like deaf or blind or low vision. I believe there are some specific to those communities as well that may speak about accessibility frequently.
Does any sort of tool exist to audit, inspect alt text, including alternative alt text recommendations? Once again, I wonder if AI does this or can do this. So again, AI is something that you can rely on as a starting point, but I would not have it proof or check anything you've already done. It should be sort of like the gateway, and then you can adjust or edit it as needed. But in terms of other tools, Leilani, I'm not sure if you have any off the top of your head that you would recommend besides that.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I have any off the top of my head.
Again, you can utilize TPGI as a resource. We have content and information on alt text, and you can always reach out to one of our experts, and would be able to help you with any questions along those lines. What's the best free accessibility checker for social media graphics? We currently use Adobe Acrobat. So for something like the image, I would recommend our color contrast analyzer. So that way you can make sure that everything is viewed properly. And again, that is a free tool. So definitely leverage that if you can. Could Leilani answer that question again, please? What would you do about intentionally mispronouncing in captions?
Oh yeah. So we were kind of speaking about it depends on the context. So I was speaking of if it was unintentional or like a filler word. So if someone says or like you may not put that in the captions, or if someone you can tell like it wasn't intentional for them to mispronunciate a word. You may just put the correct spelling in there, but I believe you were speaking about like phonetics or intentionally, like a screen reader intentionally mispronouncing something and you're wanting to put that in the captions. Then that may be a time where it is important to the context to like misspell something in the caption or put it phonetically, or just describe that it was mispronounced.
What time is the most engagement seen by the audience? Is nighttime right to post the content? So we did have a slide on that earlier in the presentation. Generally Monday through Friday during the day, typically around lunch or early morning is where best practices suggest. But it does sort of depend on your audience and the time zone. So there are variables. Night can be beneficial depending on who the target audience is, but depending, like if you're trying to target business professionals or whatever the case may be, we generally have found that during the day around lunch, or times where they would be taking breaks in the afternoon are beneficial because they'll probably be checking social media. For those of us using CRMs for social media posts, what are the best practices to ensure alt text is being captured? We use HubSpot. So yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier as well. HubSpot does allow you to add alt text to images when you're scheduling. There's going to be you can either add it to the file directly when you upload it, or you can, when you're creating the post, there's going to be a little T underneath the post where you can add the text there. It is going to be shorter than the amount of alt text that you have available to you on LinkedIn or Facebook or X. That may not always matter because, again, best practices we suggested about 2 sentences or 8 to 20 characters. But if you feel like you're not being allotted the proper amount of characters on HubSpot, post it on the other platform instead because the alt text is going to be the most important thing. So you can certainly use it. It's certainly an option. HubSpot is good for the most part, but don't rely on it too much if you feel like you need to do something that it's not giving you the capability for. Thanks to this excellent presentation of the universe of social media thinking as a web creator and that need to create alt text that will be accessible to all LinkedIn X, etc. Please provide us a list of maximum characters for your guidance. Yeah, so again, about 8 to 120 characters or 2 sentences. Somewhere around there is the ballpark for where you want to be. And then, do you indicate if you're spelling phonetically in captions? How do you do that?
I hate to say that it depends. Um, and this may be something that is like the exact like syntax of captions, maybe a little bit outside of the scope of this presentation. But sometimes like differences in spelling or like emphasis may be done by like quotes and captions, or sometimes someone may indicate like in parentheses like mispronounced, but it really just depends on like the captioning standard and like the type of video and type of captions, if that makes sense. And again, if the mispronunciation is vital to the context of the video.
All right. Looks like we have one more. I often get asked about alt text versus image descriptions. If someone only has time to add one or the other, what's your take? Alt text is going to absolutely be the most important. That's going to be the one that allows someone who's blind or low vision to interact and understand and engage with that image the same way that someone who is sighted could. So that's going to be able to describe the image for them when they're using their screen reader. How to improve the quality of the content on Instagram? I'm not sure if you mean in terms of accessibility or otherwise. Otherwise could be an entirely separate webinar all by itself. In terms of accessibility, just the considerations that we made with alt text and videos and warnings and whatnot. But if you're talking about content in general on Instagram, that could be a fairly complex topic. And we could have an entirely different session on that. But if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly and I can help you with that. How do you handle complex images in alt text, multiple people, lots of visible things with some somewhat important text like signs? Um, so again, it's probably going to be helpful to read a lot of the blog content and the content that TPGI has on our site. But my initial reaction, without knowing exactly what image you're referring to specifically, maybe it's something like a graph or a chart, is to summarize the overall point of it, like what the image is trying to convey. It might take a little interpreting to try to get the point across. Any text that's on there should be included as best as possible, or at least titles of things and things that are labeled. But you're going to probably want to try to summarize it as best you can. Sorry if this has been asked already. Do you know if any digital asset platforms like Brandfolder allow you to save alt text in the metadata so that any image pulled from the platform already has pre-vetted alt text? Typically, at least in WordPress or scheduling platforms like HubSpot, if you're talking about on social media, alt text will save and be associated with that image for all future posts. Or if you're going to use that again, but like on your website. So there, the capability is there to have it saved if as long as the image itself isn't changing. I'm not sure if you want to see this in the questions, but I just mentioned in the chat that the Describe and Caption Media Program DCMP captioning is key is very helpful for anyone who has questions about how to format captions and also has an audio description guide. That's very helpful. I didn't realize that existed, so yeah, that sounds like a great tool.
Yeah, thank you.
And then what's your take on including alt text in alt text if it's already included in the post copy as well? You should always include alt text associated with the image itself, so that because the image is going to be read by the screen reader, and if there's no alt text there, it's just going to be whatever the file's called, and that's not going to be very helpful to the user.
Yeah, and to add to that, originally when I gave this presentation at the CSUN Assistive Technology conference, there was a discussion after about like including alt text in the like actually alt text coded to the image or like attached to the social media image, and then also like in the post caption. And there were like two thoughts that were discussed that like, oh, well, it may be repeated to screen reader users, but then an additional benefit was that like if you're low vision, that could be helpful, like if you're not using a screen reader, but you also want to view the alt text. And then there's also like in Threads and Twitter, the ability to view alt text, just like with the alt text button. And then additionally, it is read to screen readers. So that's kind of like some discussion that's happened in the accessibility community on that.
Okay, great. I think that's all the questions. So thank you all for being a wonderful audience and very engaging. Hope we could have imparted some wisdom to you. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Leilani or me or TPGI, and we'll be happy to partner with you and work with you on any accessibility questions or concerns that you have.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.